Hey everyone, Mike Harris, Director of Public Policy for Gun Owners Action League with
Kerrie Ann, Director of Outreach.
All right, and we are here to talk about Executive Office of Public Safety and Security's legislative report on the live fire training component of the Basic Firearm Safety Certificate requirement.
That's a
How about
mouthful.
that?
That's a lovely mouthful.
It's just a ridiculous thing to have.
Yeah.
So this was released on July 2nd of this year, right before the 4th of July, when everyone was out for the holiday and nobody was paying attention.
How convenient.
We've had it for a couple of days. Obviously, we've been kind of pawing through it and seeing what it actually says. It was released by Secretary Terrence Reedy of EOPSS. And it is basically just the reporting requirement mandated by Section 152 of Chapter 135 of the Acts of 2025. And it is basically just a report from EOPSS about the feasibility of doing this in the state. It's still going to be implemented by April of 2026, regardless of whether or not EOPSS thinks it's a good idea because the legislature wants to do it, and that's just kind of how this works.
And this was resulting from the two hearings that we had, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so EOPSS, through their attorneys, held two public hearings. One was May 29th and the other was June 4th, where they accepted public comment on this process, just kind of what the public thought of it. And we obviously testified at both of them, really.
I did a written testimonial.
Yep. Kerrie Ann wrote one. We had one that came directly from Goal.
Garrett did a great testimonial as well.
Yep. Garrett testified in person. Me and Jim testified in person. I think Jeff Strider, the vice president of Goal, also wrote testimony.
Oh, okay.
Garrett sent in written testimony too. So we were all over this thing. Nolan Howard from NAGA submitted some testimony. I think
there was a bunch of people from different clubs. Tons of instructors and clubs.
Yeah.
And,
all over the place.
Right.
Jim DeCecca did a really good job with testimony. We had a lot of folks who did really well with this, and we obviously had some folks that didn't really kind of understand what this was because it was a very specific type of hearing.
I had a hard time understanding it at first, and then you explained to me this isn't a typical hearing. It was it was called a.
So it's an administrative hearing, kind of. But it was held by the executive branch, not the legislature. So we weren't there to discuss like the constitutionality of passing a law or what this would mean in like the bigger picture. This was for the public to comment on, to make sure that our feelings were known on the
subject matter.
Is make sure we had an impact on what the report to the legislature was going to say. So the legislature is going to take these recommendations and use them when implementing their specifics on what the curriculum is going to look like.
Did you see my look?
Yeah, same look. I responded in kind because you're completely right. But like we said, this was released on July 2nd with no real announcement right before the 4th of July, and
everybody's mostly gone for vacation.
Exactly. I mean, that was Wednesday. We were, most people were out of the office that day on. So it kind of,
convenient.
It's par for the course with this stuff. I mean, every single time there was something that happened that was significant regarding the movement of Chapter 135, it was like right before Columbus Day.
Or 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. I mean, the final version of the bill that ended up being, 140-something pages, was released at 8 p.m. the night before the vote was going to be taken at 1 p.m. the next day. So,
and expected everybody to read it, understand it, and there you go. Yeah, that makes sense.
Exactly. So, all right, we can kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this thing. So, the summary is complete BS. It was in response to Bruin and only mentions that the law was associated with ghost guns and 3D printing and red flags and improving public safety with live fire training. Those are the intentions of the bill. But it neglects to mention anything about increasing restrictions on law-abiding gun owners or guns in common use or any of the other countless new restrictions or hoops to jump through or associated nonsense with Chapter 135 itself.
Yep.
Another frustration was with the hearing process.
I was just going to talk about that.
So Section 152 directed EOPS to hold 2 public hearings in 2 different regions of the state. That's the exact wording of the statute. But they only held 2 remote hearings as not in person. So it was difficult to kind of get an actual perspective on this thing. But the reason behind that was
COVID.
yes. So back in March, Governor Healy signed Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, which extended the emergency COVID conditions. So it extended conditions for those organizations that are subject to the open meeting law. That's anybody. That's
Right.
Anybody from the below the legislature on down, because the legislature doesn't have to, they're not subject to the open meeting law, because why would they subject themselves to that?
That blows my mind.
Yeah, it's great.
That's another story.
So it allows them to provide adequate alternative means of public access for hearings until June 30th of 2027.
So
Yeah.
I got a question with that.
Yeah.
So with this whole live fire, how can they necessarily get the exact information they need if they're not visiting the clubs?
They can't.
Right.
So, if they're not looking at the club facilities and talking to the membership and the management and the board of governors for all of these essentially private organizations that are going to be tasked with taking this burden on, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I'm not going to fault directly the counsel for EOPS because he seems to be doing what he was supposed to be doing, following the orders of that he was given, which, is an excuse or not, depending on who you are. But, you're not getting an accurate picture of what is actually going on if you're not going out there and visiting
I know
it.
that now that I've been working for Goal for almost 3 years. 3 years will be next year. 2 years, technically. I know that I visit different clubs, and every club is so different, and their needs are different, and they're what they can accommodate is different. And,
Exactly.
And everything. So I just know that that's going to put a big strain on
and
a lot.
And we're going to get into that
forward.
in a few minutes as we kind of walk through this. So I'm going to try and walk through this page by page a little bit. I'm not going to make this incredibly long, I hope, but there's a lot to go through. Like I said, starting with the background and context and everything, and just the hearing process that happened. So they're saying that approximately 170 people participated in the hearings. There were 58 comments offered by 37 speakers. They received 42 written comments during the public comment period, which is open for more than 3 weeks. That stuff's all well and good, but it's just a little ridiculous that you're not out there actually taking a look at what the limitations and restrictions are on these facilities that we're asking to take this burden.
Yeah, and meet with the club, meet with the board.
I mean, it's important.
Yeah, exactly.
These are private organizations that that the state is going to be requiring a lot of services from very soon, and it's not very fair.
No.
For them to not be out there speaking directly to them or even taking a visit and looking at these facilities. It's really not. So, they page 4, they kind of walk through their key findings. So statutorily, the live fire requirement is supposed to take place in April of 2026. That's that 18-month delay that they put out. Right after, it was right after we filed our case. So right after we filed our lawsuit, they put out there, they, wrote,
convenient.
they drafted, moved, and passed a piece of legislation through the entire legislature into the hands of the governor in, essentially like 2 weeks or something that delayed this. So, so the big considerations that they're kind of pointing out is the cost and the accessibility issues. And that's kind of where we kind of come down. Cost issues are what they are. I mean, it's going to be costly on the facilities that have to provide this. It's going to be costly on the trainers who have to go through, or probably going to have to go through new training requirements themselves
Yeah.
to get certified. Whatever materials you're going to
equipment.
have to purchase.
What
The
if we have to have
equipment.
specific guns, the ammo, targets,
Yep.
eyes and ears?
Yeah, eyes and ears is kind of the big one to me because
You have to
the
have
industry
new eyes and ears.
that's the industry standard is
Right.
you'll get that as part of your class, I guess, and I think that's a little
and
bit
liability insurance.
Yep.
Because I know some instructors only provide right now, which you're allowed to, is the
Mm-hmm.
home firearm safety course, and some instructors do not have liability insurance because they just teach that course. And I don't,
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I'm not saying to do that because I do, no matter what.
Well, it's just one of those things
However-
where that's a matter of circumstance.
Right.
I mean, we said this over and over again through this debate that please in no way take this as a repudiation from goal of live fire training. We find that getting the best possible training that you can get, even if it was not required, is important.
Oh, yeah.
However, this being a mandate and it being necessary for you to exercise a constitutional right is outrageous.
Exactly. I agree.
Especially given the next issue that we were dealing with, accessibility. It's a perfect segue.
Mm-hmm.
If you live in the inner city, or if you don't own a vehicle, or there's no way for you to get out to a suburban or rural area to take this kind of training, and it's difficult for you to get out there, that forecloses your ability to exercise your Second
right.
Amendment rights.
Right.
Essentially, I mean, there's always public transportation that only goes to certain places, and then there's the last mile concern that everybody talks about. You get to the station, and then how do you get to
Right.
the range itself?
And each club, depending on how their club is situated and where they're
Mm-hmm.
located, you might not be able to do live fire at a certain time. So-
Exactly.
And so
And
that's
that's another thing that we'll get to on this too. I mean, there's so much to this, and there's so many misleading parts of this report. Whether or not whether that was on purpose or just a lack of due diligence and
I
care.
just think sometimes these people write these bills, and which we know that for fact,
Mm-hmm.
and write these reports, and they're just not knowledgeable in the process. They're literally
Yeah.
writing words down on pieces of paper without really understanding the process and understanding the whole entire
Mm-hmm.
thing. And if they actually went to these locations, maybe they would have gotten a better understanding, in my opinion.
I agree, and it's also some of the stuff that they use, some of the resources that they use and they cite in this report are inaccurate and don't offer the information that they're claiming that they offer.
Well, they're doing that on
Yeah.
purpose.
I mean, and there's some stuff in here that I think there are some recommendations in here that I think are well-meaning and display a kind of a want to cooperate and make this easier, but it's
Yeah, I
But-
noticed that.
you have to be aware of this stuff because one of the items on page 5, being cost conscious by exploring creative opportunities, e.g., state subsidies, grants, fee structures, partnerships, incentives, et cetera, to attempt to ameliorate the chance of cost burden on stakeholders, rangers, instructors, class participants. That is a recipe for disaster. We already have a range license, which is optional in this state, but
Yep.
comes with a whole bunch of restrictions.
I was just going to say that.
Please don't think for a second that there won't be strings attached to any funding that a range gets
That's a
from
good
the
point.
state.
Never thought of that one.
These are private organizations, and once you start accepting public funds, you're opening yourself up to all
Yeah.
kinds of new restrictions. And given what happened last year with with Chapter 135 and what we're seeing with this, I have no trust
No.
that the state government has any.
There's always
range's best
tricks
interests
under
at
their
heart.
sleeve. Absolutely.
They do not have our best interests
No.
at heart with this stuff. I
They're
will
going to make
maintain
it so
that.
difficult that nobody's going to want to go through this process.
Yeah. I mean,
And-
exactly. And that's, and speaking directly to that, the next bullet point right under that, ensuring resources and facilities to conduct live fire training are adequate and reasonably available to individuals in all regions of the state by continuing to understand the capacity and demand constraints and identifying opportunities to create balance. Examples include documenting and sharing information on ranges and certified instructors, offering live fire training courses, identifying transportation options, and exploring methods for increasing capacity, which is, again, more incentives and, expansion of this stuff using state funds. Talking about using existing state facilities also, to me, that could mean any number of things. I mean, we talk all the time about how Jim and I attempted to get a budget amendment into 2 budgets ago, before 135 was passed, that would have given the state the ability to put some ranges together. It's ridiculous. So, excuse me, everyone. Sorry, my allergies are acting up a little bit, and I don't feel like cutting this 15 minutes in, so we'll move on. But another part of this that that this doesn't address at all is, in order for this to be constitutionally feasible, the ranges for the pistol courses have to be indoors.
Oh, yeah.
In order for this to operate 365 days a year, for people to be able to get their training,
a lot of clubs that
has
have
to happen
outdoor only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's a valid concern at this point, but that's kind of where we have to be. We're in Massachusetts. We can get some pretty severe weather in the wintertime, and for this to actually work,
and that adds a whole level of liability too, because now I don't know about you, but I know when I go to my club, they do their very best to do what they can to make that parking lot safe and the range is safe and everything else.
Yep.
But you're dealing with ice and snow and mud and everything else in the process, and that's part of going to the range. You take that liability on because you want to continue your education.
Right. I mean, they're private facilities that they're attempting to kind of Shanghai for public purpose,
right?
Which is which has Fifth and 14th Amendment takings concerns. Anyways, we've talked about that till I was blue in the face. But all right, we can move on to the research and analysis portion. Section 2.1. States with live fire training requirements. This is the most misleading thing I have seen in a report in a long time. So they're using a number of constitutional carry states as examples of states that require live fire training for a license.
I noticed that.
Yeah, like they put Florida and Louisiana and Nebraska, Ohio and Texas. Sure, in order to get a license, you need to have live fire training. However, it's Florida, Louisiana, Nebraska, Ohio, and Texas.
Right.
I believe most of those, if all of them, I believe, have public ranges. Don't quote me on that, but I did kind of like a tertiary search while I was digging through this, and they all have public ranges.
Which is completely different.
You
than
also
what we have to deal with.
do not need to have a license to carry in any of those states. So, that's fine. It's a little bit ridiculous to use those, but it's also it's very misleading when you look at it, because it's not kind of
I
in
look
your
at this
face
and I
when
wonder
you
if
look
this
at
is
it.
all completely accurate too.
Well, I mean, there are citations at the end of this, but you'd have to go through each and every one of them.
Where to
and
carry
find the sections.
permit. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, Maryland. Yeah, but another one, the footnote on page 6 really it kind of bugged me. It says, in some states, new laws passed removing the need for a permit for individuals legally allowed to possess a firearm, Texas, Florida, and Ohio. However, permits are encouraged. You made that shit up. That is, you liars. You made that up. That is, who told you that?
Not us.
Come on. I mean, I guess by nature of the government being the government and not wanting the people to have the thing they need to overthrow them should they get too big for their britches. Sure, but you made that up.
Yep, absolutely.
Don't lie to me. Permits are encouraged.
I heard you reading that from your office.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I guess even in Maine, I guess there are certain things that you can. There are benefits to getting your concealed carry permit in Maine.
Because of parks.
You can carry in state parks and stuff like that.
Yep.
But otherwise, come on.
Right.
Get out of here.
Get out
bent.
of here.
But it also addresses in Section 2.2 municipalities within Massachusetts with live fire training requirements. Whatever. I mean, since that's always been the case, the state maintains that the LTC and the FIDs are not state licenses, quote unquote. That
Yeah,
they
so
are,
that's what I was questioning
yeah.
earlier.
So they're not state licenses.
So that's
are,
why certain towns at this point are able to
Exactly,
get
yep.
away with certain things, which I don't understand that. But
Exactly. So as long as it's not arbitrary and capricious and doesn't violate Bruin, and it's an objective standard, at this point they seem to be allowed until we have I have that on the.
yep.
Thank you for that. Yeah, you did it. I love that. We'll talk about that in a minute. That's good. But no, I mean, at this point, that's a fight for later on. Once we get once we have the fight about the LTC delays and the incongruities between towns and places where, again, it's arbitrary and capricious whether or not you get your license or in a timely manner. So that is part of the argument that we're going to be having in our federal lawsuit that we're going to be filing shortly. So we'll have more on that. But for now, Boston, Braintree, Weymouth, Rockland, and Quincy all have
some sort of live
fire requirement.
I'm not exact. I'd be dying to know exactly what it is right now, but
Yeah.
I'll have to look into that.
Well, they're kind of here, but not really. And I love that. I think the list is really funny. This has nothing to do with anything, but it's in alphabetical order except for Weymouth. I think that's funny. But and Quincy's on there. Poor Mo.
Poor Momo.
But all right, we can move on. Section 2.3. This is where it kind of gets even more egregious. So, the report says that there are 39 publicly accessible ranges in Massachusetts. Off the top of my head, and off of the list that Kerrie Ann printed up here, that we will also provide in some capacity or another. We went through ChatGPT because that's where we think they got their information from. Yeah. We're pretty sure they did a ChatGPT search to do this. But they said there's 39 publicly accessible ranges in Massachusetts. There are about 8 or so that are privately. Yeah.
Like what?
It's
39?
crazy. Yeah. I mean, if you look at this thing, you're going to be able to see this report. We'll put a link down below, but at the moment, I
don't see 39.
Yeah, there aren't 39. So there's about 8 or so privately operated for-profit ranges that this can apply to, I guess. But there are no publicly operated ranges available to the public. There are no clubs that any of the goal staff can think of that offer day passes. If you do know of a club that does that, please reach out to me, MikeH@goal.org. I would love to know where those are. But I don't know that that's a thing anywhere.
Because it doesn't say whether or not it says.
Well, these aren't even these are the for-profit ranges. Right. So, you have the Gun Parlor, Mass Firearms, On Target and Drake It, American Firearms, Boston Gun and Rifle, Norco Club.
School.
I mean, I mean, those are all the for-profit ranges. Those aren't private clubs.
Right.
You can go there and you can rent something and take a class there, and they do everything in house. I'm talking about privately run clubs.
I don't know of any club that is private that would allow that for liability reasons.
Exactly.
And because their members are going to be like, well, dude, why? Why do I even have a membership?
Exactly. I mean, so the only thing so John Green and Kerrie and I kind of sat and kind of brainstormed this out to try to figure out where they got this number, because the references that they use and the links that they post on this thing don't explain this number at all.
No.
And
they should actually say where they're getting this information from, and I don't see that.
They do say where they got it, but it doesn't make sense. So I can kind of walk through this. So the only time that this applies where the public can walk into a private club like this are certain restricted times at some ranges in the state where trap and skeet courses are open to the public, where you can do sight-ins and things like that. But it's 2 hours in the afternoon on a Thursday.
And it's a family day or something like that.
Yep. And that has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on live fire training as required by this law.
Exactly.
You're not going to take a pistol safety course
to their community as a, hey, check us out, look what we're doing.
But you're not. But again, even though this makes them publicly available, you're not going to the rifle and pistol range. You're not taking a basic pistol safety course, and they're taking you out to shoot skeet.
Again,
that's not
if
a
they
thing that's
actually
happening.
Visited these clubs, they
would understand that. Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Or even talked to them. I mean, the problem still stands. So But speaking to where what you said a few minutes ago, where did they get this information? So in this report and on the website that they cite, the mass.gov site that they cite, they use wheretoshoot.org, which the report refers to very prominently. It's a website operated by NSSF, the National Shooting Sports Foundation. They're the, if anybody doesn't know, they are the retailers trade organization kind of. They operate SHOT Show, and they represent mostly the FFLs and stuff like that.
And they do a lot of work.
They're
with
awesome.
the
Jake
clubs.
McGuigan is the man. He's our Massachusetts guy. He's awesome. But
They're all awesome.
that website lays out all the ranges near you by zip code. You can do a search. And there is no search option, even if you go into the advanced search, for public access on that website. So we don't know where this information came from.
I'd be curious.
We're gonna put out a call and try to figure out where this
we
came
have
from.
questions.
We have a lot of questions, but it's just odd. It just feels like a lack of research, I guess.
Isn't that the case with
Or
everything?
a lack
they
of
do?
diving in. I mean, they gave us this map here. Yeah. I'll take it. I'll
Private
make sure it
range,
gets up on the
both
screen while we're
public
talking about this.
accessible
Yeah.
ranges, yeah.
But also, this is kind of encouraging. I liked this number just to have it. According to the Firearms Records Bureau data posted to mass.gov, there is an average of approximately 43,000 new applications for firearms
That's
per year.
awesome. Yep.
And where they got that number was from the last 3 years. So in 2022, there were 35,216 new applicants. In 2023, there were 37,740 new applicants. And in 2024, there are 56,231. That's almost double the last 2 years.
Wonder why.
Oh, I wonder. People are emergency buying their LTCs.
Yeah, they're trying to get it now because people before August 1st and then anybody after August 1st might have to deal with this when they renew everything.
I mean, it's crazy. So, and then they used those numbers to kind of break down
and
what the burden would be on ranges.
Right.
So with the 39 publicly accessible ranges, it would be about 120. It would be about 80 to 120 new applicants a month that need range time.
Oh, wait.
And 20 to 30 new applicants a week that need range time.
Did I see that there was only 3,000 certified instructors in Massachusetts?
Yeah,
somewhere?
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's wild. Yeah, I mean let's
talk about that.
That's an average of like 3,000 new applicants a month for this. It's crazy. So, they used the 39 publicly accessible ranges number to kind of get here, but it's 20 to 30 new folks a week. What is that? How many people are in a class when you teach, Kerrie Ann?
On average, between 10 to 15.
What's your capacity that you can take? What's the max?
It depends on what class I'm teaching.
Like basic pistol, like this.
Basic pistol, if I have another instructor, I can probably handle 20, maybe.
20?
Because I do have to go through the whole live fire. It might take a little longer, but yeah. And that's another thing. I mean, like as an instructor, literally, you have to take everybody into groups and you have to be with that person.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe an instructor could handle 2 people at the same time shooting, but not more than that.
How much longer does it take with like just a general estimate? I'm not asking for like anything specific. So like if you have 10 students, it probably takes about half the time that it would take with 20 students, right? I mean, I know it's exactly half, but I mean,
the curriculum's the same no matter how much. It's
you're
at the range
at the
time
range.
where things get a little complicated. Because then you got to make sure that you have enough firearms. You have to make sure you have enough ammo. You have to make sure you have everything you need in case there's a boo-boo, like somebody
and you need
did
eyes
a paper
on
cut,
everybody.
eyes and ears.
But no, I mean, you need to keep your eyes on everybody who is on that line.
Everything. There's so much
Constantly.
that you have
these
to
are brand
constantly
new shooters.
And you know what? As an instructor, you're trained to know how to handle that situation and know that these people are new.
But at the same time, it's a huge time crunch.
It is a time crunch. It is very much a time crunch. So, and it depends on your club too, because if you have like a setup where you can actually have 2 students next to each other and you're in the middle and you're you're, able to do. Not all clubs have that ability.
So
Some clubs have like dividers, and then that causes some other issues.
so what I'm getting at is
a handicap.
how long would you say the live fire portion of your class would last on average with 10 students?
With 10 students, I would probably say, if it was just me, and we gave them, let's say, a full magazine, it would probably be an hour, maybe, give or take.
An hour?
Yeah, maybe more. I mean, it depends on.
I'd really say like an hour
I'm
and a
glad
half.
you're saying this too, because it really depends on the student. Because some of these students have had firearm experience, but they're just getting their license to carry
Sometimes
now.
they're the worst ones.
So they have some sort of understanding of the safety rules. They have understanding of what it sounds like, what it feels like, and everything else. And then if you get other people that are brand spanking new and they're nervous going out of the gate, that takes a little bit of time, because now you've got to walk through the whole entire steps of how to hold it, the whole
Everything.
fundamentals.
Grip up to
sight alignment,
recoil,
sight
react.
picture,
Yep.
Stance, everything, breath control,
and making
everything.
sure that folks will hit the target, because that's the thing. I pull down into the left sometimes too.
Yeah. Well, that and again, when you're doing a basic pistol, you get a target, and you usually bring it to a certain point, because it's not a defensive course.
Right.
So you want to make sure that the basic pistol, they have 4 little circles on a target.
Just want to make sure they get near them.
Yeah, they have to get, I think, 5 in each circle.
Yeah.
And usually it's not a problem, because you have it set to a certain distance where there is no failure.
You would realistically
And then
engage
if
with somebody.
they did not hit the target, okay, let's talk about what's going on,
Yeah.
and let's try to figure this out.
Right. So so what I'm driving at, and we kind of took a little bit of a circuitous way to get here. You do your instruction at Mansfield Pistol and
Mansfield
Rifle.
Fish and Game.
So Mansfield Fish and Game. Sorry. So in the summertime, in the springtime, you take them outside to the pistol range.
Yes, we have an instructor range specifically just for us.
Okay,
which
so
is awesome.
That's pretty cool. Not most places don't have that. But in the wintertime, you're at the indoor range.
Nope.
No,
they won't let us teach in the indoor range.
There you go.
So it's only in the outdoor range, and honestly, I've done winter classes maybe 3
nice
times,
cold ones.
and it was rough.
So
rough.
there we go. We're kind of making it more difficult for folks in the winter. But what I was kind of driving at was, if you're allowed to use the indoor range, how many lanes are at Mansfield? It's only like 6 or 7,
So
maybe 10?
on the outdoor range for the
No, I'm talking about indoors.
Oh, indoors we have maybe like 10.
I think it's about 10. So if they allowed you to use the indoor range, you're using 1 or 2 lanes. You're taking that up for probably 2 hours.
Well,
2 hours a week.
No one's probably going to want to be in there with a bunch of students. And then, because
Sure,
then I'm going
but
to,
the
now I
brave
have
soul-
to do one student at a time, because I have a dividers, and, so that's going to take.
But the brave souls that do decide to go in there, I mean, you're using up potentially the entire indoor range for 2 hours per class.
Yeah.
And if there are 3 classes running a week at that, I guess this was just a long way to get to the fact that we're taking up a lot of space
and
from
the
these
members
places
would,
that are.
that's why they made a special instructor range, so we're not taking that.
Mansfield is a special case. They have the space to do that. Most ranges do not.
No. And
I mean, especially with the local restrictions that are pushing back on ranges so much lately, there's no way that they would be without state intervention. It would be very difficult for them to expand.
And I know you and I,
like that.
this is going off topic a little bit, but you and I both worked at the town hall before, so we know that, if a club all of a sudden has an increase, they have an increased amount of shooters, that's going to be a lot more noise.
I'm sure any increase in membership would have to go through the town for them to.
I would imagine.
To even allow that stuff. But I'm just saying, even with a place like Mansfield that can do this and has the agility to adjust like this, most ranges do not have that, especially ones that are in suburban areas that are not gun and range friendly.
And not all clubs allow instructors to teach out of their clubs too.
Exactly.
So
all right, that was a little bit. That one ran a little bit long. We're already at like a half hour, which is kind of cool. We haven't done one this long, but we still have more to get to.
All right.
So moving on a little bit, one of the next section is kind of the public feedback portion of the report. They say that most commenters agree with the concept of live fire training, but do not believe it should be mandatory. I guess that's an okay way to put that. If you're talking government ease, I guess.
I mean, even when I do a home firearm safety, I offer live fire.
Of course.
Does that mean that that student's going to be proficient enough to understand how to draw from a holster and use it for self-defense?
Right.
Or home defense?
No, that takes practice of your own.
It takes practice on their own. This is just a part of it's no different than anything else. If you want to be proficient at something, you have to continue your education.
And goal, like policy-wise, one of the things we always say is in order to be a responsible gun owner, you need to continue to train and be familiar with your equipment and your abilities.
And as instructors too.
Yes, but I'm just saying, as a firearms owner, it is on you to maintain your skills.
Right.
And part of this is just this is not that. This is just an additional barrier to entry for folks who don't have the ability to do this.
I agree with
easily.
training. I do not agree with the mandate. And everybody asks me, well, why wouldn't you want that to be a requirement? And I don't mean to bring cars into the mix, but I am going to bring cars into the mix a little bit. If I'm a new driver, that doesn't mean that I know how to drive a truck, or an 18-wheeler. That's something I would have to go to school for and train, right? So I don't like that whole mandated thing. I think it's dangerous.
It's silly.
I think once the state mandates something, then that becomes a problem. But again, it comes down to just being proficient with anything you do. You want to make sure that you're being safe.
Right. And that's what this all boils down to.
Right.
I mean, but it's on you to do this. You're responsible for your own safety and for every round that comes out of your gun anyways. So
Exactly.
So we kind of just, most of what the rest of the report says is kind of just a rehashing of the beginning of it.
Right.
There are a couple portions of this that kind of bugged me. The availability and access stuff. Attendees stress the significant challenges posed by the limited number of publicly accessible ranges, noting that most are private members-only ranges, and many attendees noted that there are no state-run public ranges. That is true.
To go back to this section here where it says lack of clarity with so the live fire requirements and handguns and stuff, have you heard anything to exactly what they're going to require us to use?
That's the other portion of this. So that's what this report was kind of speaking to.
Yeah.
They're going to make these are, for lack of a better way to put it, these are the recommendations to the legislature.
So now
there are no real recommendations.
Buy
it's
like
kind
245s
of
or 322s and.
I mean, look at what Rhode Island does. I mean, you have to bring the gun that you want to be able to qualify with you.
Yeah,
in
and
some
then any
circumstances.
caliber.
Yeah.
Anything
You can use anything smaller.
Above, anything like 45. You can do 45 and above or something.
But in Rhode Island, you can get a permit to purchase without getting an LTC. Most of these states are very different. But we don't know what the requirements are going to be, what the course of fire is going to be, how long, how many rounds, what the distance will be. What your shot percentage will have to hit percentage will have to be. It's kind of nuts. Like I said, they just keep rehashing this stuff. Raise concerns about access, cost, ability to pass live fire certification on behalf of the this is your favorite part.
Yes.
On behalf of the growing demographic of underrepresented gun owners, especially women, racial minorities, elderly, and people with disabilities. So how do you feel about that one? They're just grouping all of the people that aren't your stereotypical gun owner together.
So what I don't understand is why they're putting women in that category.
Or like racial minorities. All of this. This is crazy. It doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. Nothing.
And unless you're blind, I don't really see why having a disability is or a physical disability, I guess, is really of any consequence to this. It doesn't make any sense. Nope. And elderly, I mean, they make firearms for folks who have a hard time operating firearms. It's a thing.
And people go to the range all the time. It doesn't matter. Everybody has a right to protect themselves. Yeah,
I mean, the demographic of gun owners in this country are just Americans.
Do you like how they say especially women though?
Yeah. It's ridiculous. I mean, the fastest growing demographics of gun owners in the United States are women and African Americans.
Exactly. So why? I don't even. It doesn't even make sense.
Doesn't make any sense. It's just they had to put it in there because of.
I mean, we've
politics.
talked about
It's silly.
Individuals that are like you mentioned it earlier. If you're in Boston, and let's say you're in a situation where you're a single mom and you live in an area or a location where you might
need to be able to defend yourself.
Yes, exactly. Yep. And you don't have the money and extra resources to be able to do that.
You have the need, but not the means.
And we should be providing that information. We should be, which we should have been, because that's what we were supposed to do, is education.
Yeah. And we should just be making it. We should be making it easier. We should be making it easier for folks to get the means to defend themselves, not more difficult.
Right.
And all this is just a barrier to entry for folks. That's all it is.
Yeah, wasn't the state supposed to do PSAs?
Oh yeah, the PSAs. I mean that wouldn't even fix most of the concerns with this stuff. They keep going on. There's uncertainty about whether some ranges will be willing or able to open their doors to applicants seeking training without impacting their members' use. It's crazy. We've talked about almost all of this stuff. There's really no recommendations. It just keeps rehashing the same stuff over and over again. But one spot where it does mention the cost and affordability of training, there are fears that it could price people out of gun ownership. And yes, we do keep saying that, but I maintain that is a feature of the law, not a bug. That's on purpose.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely on purpose.
And nobody's going to want to do that. Nobody wants to go through that.
Mm-hmm. And they do, I mean, to their credit, they do bring up some issues that we've been talking about since the beginning, like the constitutionality and process. Many raised concerns with the constitutionality of this requirement and wished public hearings had been conducted before the legal requirement was put in place. Mm-hmm. Like they should have done instead of the listening tour. Or they should have listened to us during the listening tour, but that's fine.
They were not listening.
Many did not understand the problem that the live fire requirement is solving. Stating that a very small portion of gun-related deaths and injuries are accidents in Massachusetts. It's silliness. I mean, Jim, that's one of Jim's favorite sayings. Like, this is a solution in search of a problem. So, and that's a common one, but Jim says it a lot. Finally, they just kind of walk through their key considerations for instructors, the state police, the added burden on MSP. That's going to be a big one on them, which is going to slow everything down because, this isn't their number one priority. The state police have other priorities that they should be they're working on.
Yep.
Firearm safety class participants in shooting ranges who I think are the biggest victim in this thing.
Yep.
After the individual gun owner, of course, that's the biggest victim is folks that are trying to exercise their Second Amendment rights. But I think after that is the private ranges. The increased burden on them.
It's going to be huge.
Without even asking them. I mean, even if it's not huge, it's still unacceptable.
Well, are they going to try to force these clubs? Because these are private-owned clubs.
Yeah. I mean, they're private clubs that own facilities.
Yeah.
That's really how it breaks down.
And some of them have been in, up and running for 100 years.
Yeah. I mean, even longer, some of them. I mean, it's just increasing the burden on these organizations
and they
without
have board members that crazy. Are, they volunteer their time. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of people that volunteer their time in cleaning up the range. Yep. They have cleanup day and everything else. I mean, they're
private. They're private property. They're privately owned facilities. Right. The state has no business imposing such burdens without compensation. And that compensation for this stuff, whatever form it takes, is going to have strings attached at certain points.
Oh, yeah.
And, we don't know if they're going to mandate that these ranges take this or they're going to provide public ranges. We don't know what they're going to do.
Where are they going to put them?
But finally, the recommendations, they're going to develop minimum standards for the live fire training requirement to clarify teaching goals, continue robust stakeholder engagement, which is the most infuriating phrase ever. I'm sick of the word stakeholders. Stakeholder engagement, especially with ranges and instructors, to work toward making adequate facilities and classes available through the Commonwealth. Engage other states to understand potential implementation barriers. I think licensing in general is a potential implementation barrier, but whatever, that's fine. Be cost conscious to mitigate potential cost impact on ranges, instructors, and participants. Goal is supposed to be nonpartisan, but I'm not. And the party in power has never been cost conscious about anything. So
No, they don't
that
care.
you can just throw that requirement in the garbage. Ensure resources and facilities to conduct live fire training are adequate and reasonably available to individuals in all regions of the state. You can check out the amendment that we were trying to file that would have put 14 public ranges in place across all of the counties.
And nothing happened with that, right? Didn't move,
validate
didn't do nothing.
capacity and all that kind of crap. They're going to continue to validate the potential capacity issues laid out in this report based on the number of applicants, instructors intending to get certified to teach live fire courses, ranges anticipated to make space available for live courses, etc. That to me says that they're going to be going after ranges to enforce that they can take.
So if like we were talking
applicants.
earlier about instructors possibly having to get trained again, are they going to pay for that too?
Of course not.
Okay.
But I don't know. Don't quote me on that, I guess. But either way, we're going to be paying for it because I was going to say I pay taxes, but no, they take taxes from me too. But anyway, so that was a really long one. The biggest message of this is to call your state rep and senator and tell them not to accept this report. We'll have a link below for you to take a look at it. And we will also put the link below for you to find out who your state rep and state senator are if you don't know. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. If you're a Goal member, we're always here to talk this stuff over.
Yeah, and we have a section on our website too that talks about this and then some. So check it out, and
you can find and if you really feel like listening to it all, I will make sure that the video link that pops up over here in front of Kerrie Ann or me is Garrett's testimony from the live fire training. I posted that a couple of months ago.
Yep. And I saw on here there was minutes, but I couldn't see the minutes from these.
Oh, they're
hidden
you can
somewhere.
find them.
Yeah.
I didn't include them in this link. You can kind of dig in and find them. I just wanted to read the report itself. Yep. But again, this was a really long one. If you stuck around to the end, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And please let us know if you have any questions and reach out to your rep and senator about this. Send them a copy because you know that most of them are not going to read it. Let them know that you are not happy with this.
They might even not know about this. You know?
I mean, it was released right before holiday.
Yep.
But yeah, send them a copy. Let them know that you're not happy with this. We're not happy with this.
Yep. And if you
do better.
Are a member of Goal, thank you. If you're not, please consider joining. We need your help.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay safe.